Sorry. This is the rest of the Delta Wordweavers story swap on April 10th. Karen Oliver is going to tell us Casey at Bat.
Thank you, Marion. Well, it was looking kind of rocky for the Mudville 9 that day. The score was 4-2 with 1 inning left to play. So when Cooney died at second and Burroughs did the same, well, a pallor leaves the features of the patrons of the game. Now a straggling few, they got up to go, leaving with the rest the hope that springs eternal within the human breast. They thought, if only Casey could get a whack at that. Well, they bet even money now with Casey at the bat. But Flynn preceded Casey, and likewise so did Blake. And the former was a puddin' and the latter was a fake. So on that stricken multitude, a death-like silence sat. So there seemed to be little chance of Casey ever getting at the bat. Then Flynn, he drove this single to the wonderment of all, and that much maligned Blake, he tore the cover off the ball. When that dust had lifted, and they saw what had occurred, well, there was Blake safe at second, and Flynn was hugging third. From that gladdened multitude, there went up this joyous yell. It bounded in the mountaintops, and it rattled in the dell. It struck upon the hillside and rebounded in the flat. For Casey, mighty Casey, was advancing at the bat. Now, there was an ease in Casey's manner as he stepped up to the plate, and there was a pride in Casey's bearing and a smile on Casey's face. And when responding to the cheers, he lightly doffed his hat. No stranger in the crowd could doubt 'twas Casey at the bat. 10,000 eyes were on him as he rubbed his hands in dirt, and 5,000 tongues applauded when he wiped them on his shirt. When that writhing pitcher ground the ball into his hip, defiance glanced in Casey's eye and a sneer curled Casey's lip. Then that leather-covered sphere came hurtling through the air, and Casey stood there watching in some haughty grandeur. There by the sturdy batsman, that ball unheeded sped. "Not my style," said Casey. "Strike one," the umpire said. From the bleachers, black with people, there came this muffled roar like the beat of storm waves on a stern and distant shore. Kill him, the umpire, as someone shouted from the stands. And, they'd likely have killed him had not Casey raised his hand, and with a smile of Christian charity, great Casey's visage shone. He eased that rising tumult. He made that game go on. With a nod to the pitcher, once more that spheroid flew, and Casey still ignored it. And the umpire said, "Strike two!" Fraud, cried the thousands, and echo answered fraud. But one scornful look from Casey, and that audience was awed. They saw his face grow stern and cold, and they saw his muscles strain, and they knew Casey wouldn't let the ball go by again. Now the pitcher holds the ball, and now he lets it go. And now the air is shattered by the force of Casey's blow. Somewhere in this favored land, the sun is shining bright, and a band is playing somewhere, and somewhere hearts are light. Somewhere men are laughing, and somewhere children shout. But there's no joy in Mudville. Mighty Casey has struck out. Thank you. Hello?
Thank you, Karen. I was having trouble unmuting. Very, very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've gotten better through the years. Yay.
That's good to hear.
I always enjoy the enthusiasm. Yes. That's the wonderful part, for enthusiasm for the sports and for our stories. And now we're going to have Ida wrap us up with her story. Unmute, Miss Ida.
Do we hear Diamond yet?
No, not
Okay.
yet. Oh, you're right. I was gonna put Diamond next. I don't care.
I'll go if she isn't hopping in. Okay. My story is called The Land of the Golden Hills, a story I made up inspired by Sheila Arnold's Stage Bridge class of fairy tales, folk tales, and social justice. The Golden Hills. Once long ago, there was an emperor who had many lands, and his oldest son would inherit the old kingdom and the old capital. But the second son could make his choice of the lands that his father ruled, and the second son chose the land of the Golden Hills. For this land he had heard about and longed to visit, for it was so far away. And so he went to fix his computer, because of course it never works when you wish to. And so the second son went to become the king of the Golden Hills. And it was a land that was as beautiful as he had heard, for there were hills shining golden in the sun. And in the valleys of those hills, there were little villages that were peopled by families who had lived in that region for ages and ages. And they used that land so well, with the stream that would run through the valley, filled with wonderful salmon and beautiful fish. They could gather from the oak trees all around, and they had everything they needed in that beautiful land. And so the king came and he built himself a palace on top of the hill, that golden hill. And he looked around and, well, he wanted it to feel like home. And so he planted green grass, and his wife, the queen, wanted a rose garden to remind her of her old home in the old kingdom. And, well, their children needed a pond, a pool to wade in. And so those things were built on top of the hill, and soon other courtiers came from the old kingdom to live in this new land. And, well, they wanted houses on top of the hill like the king had, like they had had. And so more and more people came, and, well, soon the wells that they dug couldn't produce enough water for all of those gardens and pools, and the servants were getting awfully tired of lugging buckets of water up the hill from the little streams in the valleys. And then there was less and less water, and the king called engineers from the old kingdom, and they dammed up the creeks, and they built pipelines to bring in the water, and more people came, and there was less water in the little streams in the valleys, and fewer fish in the streams, and many of the trees that grew by the streams were dying, not enough water. And more people came, and soon some of the people who came began to complain. Those hills aren't golden. They're nothing but brown grass. It never rains here in the summer, and when it rains in the winter, there's only a little bit of rain. There's not enough water around here. Build more dams, get more water in here, they complained to the king. The king shook his head. What was he to do? for the villagers now were losing what they needed to keep their livelihood going. And he called in the wizard. The wizard was a wise man who had been talking to the wise ones of the village. And the king said, "You can do magic. I want a wish that will let me get more rain for all the people who need more water." Now, the wizard was wise in the ways of kings and wishes. And he said, "You must be careful what you wish for." "Oh, I know what we need. We need more rain. I wish that the rain would fall and it wouldn't stop. The rain would just keep falling so that we all have enough water." The wizard shook his head, but the wish had been made, and soon the sky darkened and the rain began to fall, and it rained and it rained. And soon the reservoirs, the dammed up lakes began to overflow, and then the streams were filled and they washed out those little villages along the creek banks. And soon the hills were getting soaked and mudslides began to slide down the edges of those rain-soaked mountains. And people ran to the king, "Do something, do something. Stop this rain, stop this rain. It's falling everywhere." And the king called the wizard. "You need to be careful what you wish. I can give you only one more wish. Be wise in your choice." "Oh, as the king, I declare I want the rain to stop. I want it to stop raining." And soon the sun came out, and the sun was shining and the clouds went away, and oh, no more gray skies. And the sun was shining and it evaporated the mud that was now drying out. But soon the hills were drying out and the reservoirs were getting lower and lower. And the people in the little villages by the streams and the valleys, now there was no water for the fish. There was no water for the trees that grew there. And then there was a spark that fell on one of the dry grassy hills, and soon it began to spread, and there were fires all around, and the fire was raging and coming up the hill. And the king called, "Wizard, help, help, stop the fire, stop this sunshine." The wizard knew that usually wishes come in threes, and so he had saved one last wish. But he explained, "I will make this wish, but it will not be enough. I will wish, but everyone in the whole kingdom, old and new, must work together to make this work." "Whatever, do it, do it." "I wish for the rain and sunshine to go back to the old way that they were, with sun in the summer and rain in the winter." And so the fire stopped roaring up the hill when the rain started. And it rained for several months, and then the sun came out. But in the meantime, the wizard had called all the wise ones from the villages and had called all of the representatives from all of the houses on top of the hill, and he and the wise ones explained. New plants that were grown had to be the kinds of plants that grew in that land by themselves, that didn't need the water. People needed to stop using the water for things that weren't necessary, like wading pools, and everyone needed to work together. I will take less showers, said the queen, and everyone would have to do their part. The wizard gathered everyone together and he said, "We must cooperate, for that's all the magic that I can do. But to cooperate will require a miracle."
Thank you, Ida. This concludes our recorded part of our session. So we thank the listeners on our recording for coming, and come back in a month for May 8th, Family Stories with Delta Wordweavers, and May 12th, email to Marion that you would like to attend Pam Farrow's workshop because it's free. So we'll see our video listeners next month. Thank you.